Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I hope everybody's doing wonderful today. We want to welcome you to DIR's continued series of virtual workshops. And today's topic is payments. We're going to look at VAT payments and we're going to look at business license payments. What are they? How do you do it? If you're having any issues with payment, what do you need to do? We're talking about credits, debts, everything there is to know. So, just before we get started, we want to go through a few housekeeping tips. You will be muted throughout the entire session today. And if you have any questions, we're asking that you drop them in the chat on Zoom or in the chat on YouTube. And once we are done with the presentations, we will have an open Q&A session where we'll answer all those questions live, or some of our staff is on the Zoom and on YouTube, and they may answer them as we are going. So please sit back and enjoy, and note any questions that you have. We will be here until 12 o'clock. Unless we run out of questions and we get everything done so quickly, we'll be delighted with that. So our presenter today will be Ms. Crystal Hyler from the General Processing Unit, who is responsible for payments across the board, specifically with VAT and business license. And she is going to present to you guys today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hyler so that we can get started. Ms. Hyler, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Wonderful. Ms. Hyler, let's take it away.
Right. Good day, everyone. As John has already mentioned, my name is Crystal Hyler, and I am the VAT and Business License Payments Team Lead. So today we're going to be going through the different ways you can pay at the Department of Inland Revenue for business license and VAT. Just some general dates we wanted you guys to note. I know Real Property Tax will be doing their presentation on March the 26th about how to do payments with them, but we just wanted everyone to know that their deadline is March 31st, just like business license. I'm sure they'll go into more details on that end. But the deadline is 21 days after your filing period. So for those who are doing their January to March filing period now, April 21st is the deadline to both file and pay. And our large taxpayers, they file and pay monthly. The due date is the 14th for them for filing and payment. Now, for VAT and business license payments, we have 3 ways in which you can pay. Wire payments, you can do payments through our online portal, which is the one we recommend, and you can also do payments at the bank. For wire payments, our banking details for VAT, business license, and real property tax can all be found on our website. If you click the tab VAT business license to the top when you come to the website and go to the link that says wire transfer information, it will show you all of those banking details that you will need. Our branch is the main Nassau branch at RBC with branch code 05625. And then you will notice the bank accounts for VAT 2884609. Now we have a Bahamian dollar and a US dollar bank account. To the top, it shows the Bahamian dollar account, and below to the bottom, you will see how to transfer wires to the US dollar account, which goes to JP Morgan and Chase. Please note that those accounts only accept those denominations. The Bahamian dollar account only accepts Bahamian dollar, USD only accepts USD. If you send Bahamian dollar to our USD account, RBC more than likely will reject the payment. So make sure you get the accounts correct when you put in that wiring information. You will also note that there is a line that says your tax identification number, your TIN, should be in the reference. So the reference section or the memo section, additional information, depending on the bank you use, the title might be different. It needs to be the 9-digit TIN number. After that 9-digit TIN number, please put the name of the company in which you want it to be paid for. The way our bank file comes to us, the system is looking for the TIN, but if that TIN is transposed or incorrect in any way, putting the company name after that TIN, in some cases, we can figure out which account we need to put it to if we don't have that TIN number. This is the VAT information. This is the business license information. Like I said, it can be found at the webs on our online website. With bank wires, though, the effective date, that's the date that our system is going to recognize, is the date that it is received in our bank account. So if we have someone who sent a payment today, on the 5th, if for whatever reason that payment was delayed, maybe there was background processing, insufficient funds at the time, or if it needed an additional approval, if you have, say, for instance, Scotia, the business banking, it requires sometimes one or two approvals depending on how you have your account set up. If that approval didn't come from your CFOs or CEOs until the 10th, and that bank wire actually was received by RBC on the 11th is the effective date that our system is going to note for that payment coming in. So please be mindful of that. In those cases, this is why we highly recommend that you use the online portal to pay instead of wiring, because not only will we only receive that payment on the 11th, we also have to wait for the bank to encrypt that file, do their different workings that they have to do, and then send it to us, which is why we say for bank files, we estimate about a 5 to 7 working day before you actually see it reflected on your account. Normally for those back-end processing. The effective date will still be the date that we received it in our bank, but it just takes a little bit extra days for us to actually do the working with that payment. If you would like to see that right away, however, we recommend using our portal. You can access the portal when you go to the website and click login to the top. It's going to take you to the login page, and once you log in, you will then see your login, which will have your different TINs. If you have multiple businesses, you'll click on the TIN and it'll take you to the home page. Now, from that home page, there are multiple different ways in which you can make a payment. The first is through the actual make a payment tab. Now, you'll go to tax accounts, make a payment, and this will then bring you into pay now, and you'll come to the payment screen. With this payment screen, like I said, there's multiple ways to get here. The second way would be through the notifications. If you were to log in and scroll down a bit to that bottom right-hand side, you'll see action required, and you will see any payments that still need to be made. Please note these payments go in date order. So in our example here, we'll say our name is Jim, and maybe he has an arts and crafts store. The first payment that he is seeing overdue is January 2023. He can click on that. It brings him to a screen. This is normally what we call our amendment screen. If you've had to do an amendment to your return, this is normally the screen that the steps will direct you to. From this screen, you can go and make a payment, and it brings you to that same payments page you saw before, but in this case, it is now selected. The next way we would go is through tax accounts. Now, in tax accounts, it brings you to the listing of your different tax periods. To the top of that listing, however, normally when you first come to this page, it shows that it will only show you the different returns you filed in the last 12 months. So it only shows you a year. For you, if Jim wants to go and pay that January 2023 return, what he had to do was filter for VAT, go to filter dates, and then change the range to all. Or he can put in the start and end date for the period that he filed. That's the only way he's going to see all of these extra returns, such as January, February, March 2023. If not, he would have only seen the last filings for 2024 and 2025. So since he's trying to pay that January 23, we've filtered for all, we've searched through the different tabs, and we can now click on January 2023, which again, if you were to actually click January, it brings you to this page. And normally, if it's a period that can be amended, under options available to that bottom section, he would be able to amend it. And then he can also click pay now. If he wasn't amending though, he can go under actions and just click pay now, which will bring him right back to that same screen before. way in which you can still get to that payment screen using the online portal is to actually file the return. When you file any return, to the bottom, once it tells you it's been received, you'll see a Pay Now button. Clicking that, again, brings you to your payment screen. One thing I'd like to note, however, is earlier we mentioned about VAT and business license having their separate accounts. Because of this, when you go to pay online, you can only pay for tax types that are relative to VAT. VAT tax types will be you can pay together, and business license returns you can pay together. This is because when we get the report from the bank, we get a credit card report that tells us all payments that came into the business license account and all payments that came into the VAT account from our online portal, from our RBC liaison. Because the online portal is trying to make payments directly to the VAT account or directly to the business license, it will not allow you to select VAT and business license together. You'll have to make two separate payments doing VAT or business license. You'll notice in this particular screenshot, you see something that says VAT-free scheme. This is the same for persons who are part of our Global Blue program. These would be people who sell mainly to tourists. As VAT is a consumer tax, those tourists who aren't consuming the good here in the Bahamas and they're taking them with them. We have some companies, take for instance, if Jim was a arts and crafts seller on Paradise Island, so a large part of his sales were done to tourists, he might be one of those people who would apply and be accepted into the Global Blue program, and they have returns called VAT-free scheme. So here you can pay VAT-free scheme and VAT together because those Global Blue payments are paid to the VAT bank account, not to business license or RPT. Those persons must pay to the VAT account. In this example here for Jim, we're going to say that maybe Jim, he just did his February 2025 filing, so he wants to pay that. He wants to pay his January 2023 because he's on a payment plan, but he also wants to pay for December 2024. Right now, that period's in a credit, but he was audited and he knows that he has maybe another $200 to pay on that once the audit goes through. The audit hasn't been posted yet, but Jim is a proactive taxpayer and he wants to pay it now because according to his audit agreement, the agreement he went into with his audit agent, they told him if he pays within a certain window, they would waive any penalties that would occur on his account. They would go back and take those off. So he wants to pay that now. This screen only shows you periods that have outstanding debts. So for him to get to that December period that's showing as a credit, he has to click that blue button that says add item to pay. From there, he can then select VAT, put in the year 2024, and select that December return that's showing as a credit. Now that he has all three of these things selected, he can go in and click Pay Now. Now, in this initial screen, that December period would show as 0. The February part would show as 355 and 55 cents, and the January 2023 would show as $5,302.15. But as you can see in this window, Jim can now edit these to put in the figures he needs to put in because he knows that audit assessment is $200 and the agreement on his payment plan is he has to pay the current, which is that February filing, but he also needs to put the $4,000 of his payment plan to the oldest debt of January 2023. Or it could be that he has a refund case in the system and he knows it's going to be applied to that January 2023, so he is now paying the difference. The online portal allows you to edit and put in specifically what you want to pay to what period. If Jim had decided he wanted to wire $4,554.55, this came across our VAT bank account. And when the system gets the file to upload, the system uses our rule of applying to the oldest debt. Because of this, the entire payment would have been applied to January 2023, and Jim would then have to send us a message so that a payment officer can go back and reallocate this payment to the periods he wants. This is why we highly recommend that payments are done through the portal because you see it right away and it applies directly to where you want it to go. Also, if Jim has multiple companies under his name, but all of the companies wire through one bank account. In some cases, if Jim forgot to put the TIN, we would get a reference line that would say the parent company's name is wiring us a payment, and all of the payments could be applied to the one TIN. And then we have to get information from Jim in an inquiry to let us know, no, these payments should have been split between multiple TINs. The online system allows us to not have to worry about any of that because it tells us exactly where those payments go. Now, to the bottom of this screen, you will see that it says Pay Now. This is a very sensitive button. And during those periods, like I said, VAT filings for large taxpayers are done on the 14th, and for our regular taxpayers are on the 21st day of that following month after their filing period. Those are very high traffic days on our portal. And sometimes there can be a lot of lags. We understand that this is a problem that can happen. We do have persons sometimes seeing that delay will try to click the pay now button multiple times, thinking that their payment is not going through. This multiple payments to come off your card. We do not recommend that. Once you've clicked it once, if you see that you're getting a message saying the page isn't loading, or you see that it's taking a long time, we always recommend you check your bank account just in case to make sure those funds haven't come off. If those funds came off multiple times, this is where you come into a chargeback. In inland revenue, we call it a chargeback. Different banks call it different things. It's normally for most banks called a payment dispute. With dispute, if you this must be initiated with your bank. RBC does not allow inland revenue to start it on our end. So what happens is you go to your bank, you let them know I was charged twice at inland revenue, or I made an overpayment. I want to do a payment dispute to dispute this charge and have it returned. They will then give you a transaction number for that dispute. What happens is your bank and RBC will then start talking to have those funds returned back to your card. You can send an inquiry letting us know that dispute number, but you will also need to let us know the name on the card, the last four digits on the card you used, and the card type, Visa or MasterCard. This is the only information that we get from RBC. When they send us the file that says these are the payments made to VAT or business license, the only thing we can see is the last four digits and the card type. So we wouldn't have all of your card information. That's not the information we receive. That's why it's difficult for us to start disputes on our end. That's why we need it to come from your bank account, because RBC will contact us, say this person has a dispute. This is the dispute number. This is the last four digits of the card they use. Can you please advise if they did have an overpayment? So we always recommend you start the dispute with your bank and then supply that information to us in an inquiry case so that when we get to the dispute, we can tell the bank, okay, bank, this is correct. They handle everything. The two banks handle everything on their end. There's nothing that inland revenue does besides putting in a journal entry to say, okay, funds were returned. In the event of missing payments and reallocations, we also need you to send in an inquiry case for those as well. In some cases, when we do a missing payment investigation, if we can't find the payment, we will ask you to do a bank trace, a trace with your bank, so that they can let you know, okay, maybe the funds were sent, maybe they were returned because of an error. To start our investigation for both missing payments and payment reallocations, however, we ask for your transactions detail page from the bank. I'm going to go into further detail on what that is in a second. But for these instances, when you send us an inquiry, you would tell us, okay, maybe Jim did make that $4,000 payment through a bank wire, and now he needs it split. We need the transactions detail page because one, we need to make sure that it is actually Jim who sent us the money, and that for whatever reason, maybe that TIN that we got on our bank file, it wasn't transposed and wasn't actually for someone else. We also need to verify the bank that it's coming from and the account you sent it to. So the transaction details page, this is how you set up sending the message in an inquiry. Go to inbox, new messages. Please ensure when you put what the inquiry is about, that subject, it says payment. A lot of instances, People will put, business license because the payment was for business license, or they'll put payment plan because it was a payment for an installment. If it has to do with a payment being reallocated, a payment being missing, you just letting us know that you sent a payment in a wire, and so you're just giving us heads up to note it on our bank file, please make sure the subject says payment. We have a lot of different departments who handle a lot of different things. Like I said, Real Property Tax will be doing their session on payments on March 21st. So the different departments, there's different departments for payments. We don't, at general processing in our payments team, we don't handle real property tax payments. And also collections, audit, business license, they don't look at the payment files for VAT and business license. So if you have a payment that you're talking about that needs to be reallocated, or a payment that's missing for VAT or business license, you need to make sure that subject line says payment, because when the system sends out the inquiry cases to different officers, the team is looking for inquiry cases that say payment to make sure that they get assigned to us. If you put business license, that might wind up in the business license officer's caseload, and it might be a while until that actually makes it to the payment team for us to investigate. So you'd set it up just like this, where you put payment, you can let us know the period, and your message to break out when the payment was sent, the amount of it, how you want it applied, and please make sure you attach the bank receipt, the transaction detail, to that inquiry. You'll get an inquiry number. We do know in some instances, we've had people say, oh, they sent an inquiry, but they don't see it in their inbox. A lot of cases, you won't see it until an officer responds. So when you get to this page, make sure you write down that inquiry number so you have it for your reference. If for whatever reason you need to call in, you can reference that number and we can find out what officer has your case. Now, these are some instances of that transactions details page that we were talking about. You'll notice that you have a First Caribbean one, a CIBC one. And like I said, the areas that are black, we don't want them black when you send them to us because it's information we'll need. But in this case, this is actually someone's report, so we didn't want that to be out there. But we need to see the bank that's sending it, the account it's coming from, and the account it's going to. In the example of the CIBC one, you'll see that I have circled here, the account it actually was sent to is Real Property Tax. If they were trying to pay for VAT or business license and that payment went to real property tax, customs, maybe you paid the environmental health account, or maybe even the finance consolidated account, all of these accounts are handled by different officers in different ministries in different areas. We cannot see here at the general processing who handle VAT and business license, we cannot see what's actually coming in through the real property tax account. So that's why we say it's very important we see that transaction detail page, so we know if we need to contact another ministry or area to actually find your payment. You'll also notice I have a copy of a payment made to the bank, which is one way that payments can be made. If for whatever reason, we know technology sometimes can be finicky. If your online banking is down, or you don't have a business card to pay at the portal, or if the portal is down, you can always go to the bank. And the thing with going to the bank is under products sold, you'll see right there, it has BSD bill payment, Bahamas government VAT, narration, PIN. This, when you go to the bank, when you get that receipt, you can see exactly where they sent it. You can see through the narration whether they got your TIN right and the amount that's being applied to that TIN. We have had receipts that come in where people have paid multiple accounts at once. Sometimes under products sold, this person could have paid $343.74 to the business license account, $8,000 to VAT, and $100,000 to real property tax. In the bank, you can notify that to the teller and they will break that out, and you will see a list that says this was applied to the VAT account, this was applied to the business license account, and this was applied to real property tax. It breaks all of that out. So before you even leave the bank, you can look right at your receipt, see the account they sent it to, and whether or not the narration is correct. Please note that for business license and for VAT, the narration should be your 9-digit TIN. We have persons who sometimes will give us a receipt with their business license number on it. Our system reads the TIN for VAT and business license to know what account to apply it to. So that is very important. Real property tax, like I said, will do their seminar where they talk about the assessment number that they're looking for. But if you go to the bank, please ensure that you are giving them the TIN so that they can put that on the receipt and you can verify all of that information right before you leave the bank. The next to that receipt, you'll see this bottom part. This is a status summary. The transaction details page for different banks look different. This is the bottom half of this receipt for CIBC, and this tells us when the payment actually made it to the bank. So if it was an investigation for a payment that you sent, it would tell us, okay, it was initiated on November 14th. Like I said, sometimes it requires approvals. It tells us the time of the approvals were done. And it tells us when it was in progress, and to the bottom, sent to other bank November 15th. So this person might have came and said, I sent a wire on November 14th. I don't see it applied on November 14th. But this transaction detail is actually telling me, okay, the bank didn't actually receive that payment until November 15th. And that helps our investigating officers narrow down the date that they should actually be looking for. This is very important for us. And this can be in different places on different receipts. I know for Scotiabank, theirs is actually on the right-hand side. CIBC, it's to the bottom. If you have any additional questions, you can also call our call lines. Please note for business license payments, like I said earlier, these, although you can send the payment one time, we know that you now have the actual and the estimate. So if you're sending one payment for the actual and the estimate, our system can, when it uploads the bank file, can only apply it to one area. This is going to require an officer to manually go in and move it. So we always recommend that if you can, you send two wires, one for the estimate, one for the actual. But again, that's also why we recommend you use the online portal, because it allows you to click actual and estimate and apply them exactly where they need to go. Please note also, even when you're sending wires, that you need to give time for the bank for clearing, which is why we also emphasize trying to pay early. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Job well done as usual. Okay, folks, we want to open the floor to any questions that you guys may have. Please drop your questions in the chat if you have any questions for Crystal. Crystal, while we're waiting on persons to drop their questions, I may have missed it. Can you say a little something about payment plans? Persons not aware that they are offered with regards to the department. Could you just shed some light on that for us, please?
Have people who come in quite often saying that they maybe they filed a return, it was larger than they were expecting for the month, and they can't pay it all at once, or maybe they were audited and the fees that actually they realized they were filing incorrectly, and the fees are now very high due to an audit. They can't pay it all at once and need a little help paying it off. The department does offer payment plans that is managed by our collections team. When you come into the office, you can let them know what issues you're experiencing. There's actually a form they have you fill out that goes into details about outside expenses you might have, what actually, if you're currently in a contract and you're waiting on payment from a vendor, all of that information is taken by our collections officer, and they will work for a plan to help you to pay that off. I believe in the beginning, they normally ask for about 45% just to start the plan. But again, that is negotiable based on your whatever's happening with you at the time, what your circumstances may be. So we do have payment plans. With the payment plan, however, they put the plan together for you to pay off the back debt you might have. But a requirement of those plans is that you stay current. That's why in the example I gave with Jim, he had to pay that February 2025 in full, but also make the payment for what was a part of his plan for that back debt he was owing. In those instances, again, if you send a wire, the system doesn't have a way right now, we're working on it, but it doesn't have the capability to say that, okay, this is actually for the payment plan, this is for the current. It has no way of knowing that at the time. So all of that goes to the oldest debt. You will have to send us an inquiry letting us know, okay, this is actually what's for the current, this is what's for my payment plan. So that an officer can go in and manually change that.
Thank you, Ms. Hyler. Just trying to scroll through the chat to get through some of these questions. I came late, but what is the estimated approval time of business license renewal? Depending, the standard time is 7 to 14 business days. But if you are under the threshold, depending on certain type of business natures, they're usually turning over very fast. We've had a good turnover rate with regards to renewals, as long as you would have done the renewal process correctly, which is submitting your annual actual, submitting your annual estimate. They're turning over pretty fast. For persons who are over 250,000 or 5 million plus, we know that you have to provide some additional documents, financial documents, audited financials from a BICA member, etc. And that those taxpayers require a little more digging. And if when you're submitting your renewal, the system triggers something like if you were to submit 0 for your turnover repeatedly, or if you had a substantial figure last year and it would have dropped, then it triggers something for us to dive a little deeper into your renewal, and we may ask you a few questions. Get
If I
information distinctly. Pardon me. Go ahead, Ms. Hyler.
I did forget to mention, we do have some persons for business license. If your return was very high, business license, sometimes before they release the license, will try to ask the payments team if a payment has come in for it. It depends on what that actual return amount was. We also have instances where people are trying to get TCCs, and TCC is saying we need to verify these periods were paid. In those cases, like I said, if you decide to wire instead of using the online portal, you can have that delay. So if you supply a receipt in your tax compliance request, or if you supply a receipt to whoever your business license officer is who's working on your case, they normally will notify the general processing team because, like I said, they don't see those bank files. And we can tell them, yes, we do actually see it in the online banking. We're just waiting on the bank file from RBC, and we'll recommend release for those items. There's also sometimes cases where a person has a refund case as they're trying to use to pay a period. We have people call and said, okay, well, I made part of the payment. The refund will cover the rest, and I'm seeing additional penalties that shouldn't be there. We also notify those different departments and let them know payment is pending. The refund case is also still being worked on. The penalties will be wiped off once all of those things are applied with their correct effective dates. So we can release those licenses and TCCs. So just keep in mind, if that is something that's stopping those releases, please submit those receipts in the EAQ so we can advise the different officers that need to be advised to release those items.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I heard you mention TCC. So for those that may not be aware, the TCC is the tax compliance certificate, and that tells us and anyone that you're doing work with that you are compliant. If there is anything owed across the board in government tax, your TCC will be denied. That is business license, VAT, real property tax, NIB, Bahamas Customs, etc. So you always want to ensure that you are up to date and compliant with all government fees and taxes. Apostle Miller, can you kindly drop your email in the chat for us, please? And we will definitely have someone reach out to you with regards to your case. We see, is there a delay in sending out licenses? I applied from January. No, there's not a delay in releasing the licenses. But if you can send a direct message to me with your TIN right in the chat, and we will investigate and see just why you would not receive your license from January. We're hoping that you would have applied properly for your renewal, and that is submitting the annual actual and the annual estimate. Folks, we want to remind you to keep dropping your questions in with regards to payments. Ms. Hyler, I think you did such a wonderful job that we don't have a lot of questions with regards to this. We also want to remind you guys that everything that Ms. Hyler would have said in terms of the banking information, transfer information, how to pay, and where to pay can be found on our website, inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs, under each of the specific tax types. So under business license, under real property tax, and under VAT, you'll be able to scroll down and see exactly how to pay and where to pay, depending on the method of payment that you want to do. For real property tax, those are coming into the office. You're reminded that we are cashless, but we do accept certain types of checks. I think, Ms. Hyde, you can verify. I think it is managers checks only that we accept, and I think um, lawyer offices. I think you can confirm that
Yes,
for me.
we tend to move away from checks. They can be a bit of a more complicated process because we have to wait for the clearinghouse and everything. So those actually take a little longer. It's normally why we recommend wires and online payments. The bank will not accept personal checks. RBC will reject the personal checks, so they have to be manager's draft checks. Again, if you do want to send a check, we recommend you actually send it to the bank. That way, the bank will handle it and tell you what they do and don't accept right away, as opposed to coming into the office. I do believe real property tax, however, still does accept it for them. They'll elaborate further. But for VAT and business license, if you do have to take a check, we recommend you go straight to RBC and give them the check.
Thank you so much. Yes, I see Maria saying, can another webinar be done for business license renewals? Or where can I find a recording? Yes, you can go to our YouTube page, capital DIR Bahamas. You'll find all of our sessions. You'll even see a few how-to videos on how to renew your business license, how to apply for it. Everything there is to know about the department can be found there. You can also follow us on social media. We're very active. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and that also is capital DIR Bahamas. And you'll find all of our how-to videos, all of our flyers, as well. You can go visit the website, as I said, inlandrevenue.finance.gov.bs. Yes, and if you, I see some, okay, that's, I think, for my email. My email is johnrwilliams@bahamas.gov.bs. You can also send an email to tax inquiries with an E at bahamas.gov.bs for any issues that you may have. And you can also send an email to Ms. Heiler, who is so helpful today. She is Crystal Heiler at bahamas.gov.bs. I don't think we have any more questions rolling in today. Ms. Heiler, we want to thank you for your awesome presentation on payment. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we look forward to you always joining us for our virtual sessions on everything there is about inland revenue. So thank you once again.
John,
Those who, yes.
one note I did forget also for those persons who did wire a payment it needed reallocated. If for whatever reason they wired it, let's say they wired it to business license and it was really for VAT, those we do need that in writing from the taxpayer. So for those instances, we do require you to send an inquiry because an officer has to manually move that. Like I said, the system is looking for VAT to go to VAT and business license to go to business license. If those have to be moved manually, we need permission from the taxpayer. So those in writing, we need those emailed in or in an inquiry so that it's logged in our system.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Hyler. Yes, everything. The webinar again will be posted on on YouTube, so you guys can rewatch it. I want to thank you all again for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Everybody have a wonderful day.